How is it possible that a map created more than 5 centuries ago shows the Sahara not as an endless desert, but as a land filled with huge lakes, rivers, forests, and dozens of cities? Why did some of the most respected cartographers of their time depict a continent that looks completely different from the Africa we know today? Are these just mistakes, legends, and guesswork, or traces of lost knowledge that reached the Middle Ages from a much more ancient era? In this video, we will examine a series of amazing historical maps, compare them with modern scientific discoveries, and ask ourselves whether we are facing one of the greatest mysteries in the history of mankind. Why is there a map created about 500 years ago, one of the first to depict the entire continent of Africa, that shows the Sahara with huge lakes, rivers, and even vast forests? This is completely different from the endless desert we know today. If that seems strange to you, wait until you see what else these maps hide. The map was created by Sebastian Münster, one of the most influential cartographers of the 16th century. He was the first to print separate maps of all then-known continents, including Africa, Europe, Asia, North, and South America. It is hard to believe that such a respected cartographer would depict the Sahara, filled with lakes, rivers, and forests, without having some source of information. This is what made me start looking for the oldest maps of Africa. The results were surprising. A map from 1482, made by the German cartographer Leonhard Hall, shows the Sahara with numerous rivers, lakes, and cities. Other medieval maps depict fortified settlements and even castles in the middle of today's desert. Even more impressive is the Catalan Atlas from 1375, kept in the Royal Library of France. In addition to depicting Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire, considered the richest man in history, the map marks numerous cities in the heart of the Sahara. Next is the map by Fra Mauro from around 1450. Although initially oriented south, once it is properly rotated, it is clear that much of the Sahara is filled with cities and populated areas. And this is far from the only example. Gerardus Mercator's map from 1578 shows a complex river system running through the Sahara. The Italian engraver Fernando Bertelli, in his map from 1565, depicts 3 huge lakes connected by a river network. Even more interesting is the world map by Martin Waldseemüller from 1507, the same cartographer who first used the name America. And on it, the Sahara is again shown with cities, lakes, and rivers. After so many different maps, a recurring pattern begins to emerge. However, it is important to make one clarification. I am not claiming that these maps depict the Sahara as it looked in the 16th century. It is possible that they preserve much older knowledge of a time when the area looked very different. This is where the story gets even more interesting. In recent years, scientific research has shown that around 5,000 to 11,000 years ago, the Sahara was indeed green, with lakes, rivers, grasslands, and rich vegetation. This is the period known as the African Wet Period. This raises an intriguing question. If science is only now reconstructing the picture of this ancient green Sahara, how did cartographers more than 5 centuries ago have such detailed images of such a world? If these rivers did not exist about 500 years ago, then an even more intriguing possibility remains, that the ancient cartographers had knowledge transmitted from much older sources. What's even more interesting is that such depictions don't begin in the Renaissance. Some of them are based on the works of Claudius Ptolemy, created in the 2nd century. This raises the question of whether Ptolemy himself used even older maps that survived to his time. A similar example is the famous Piri Reis map from 1513. The author himself claims to have compiled it using more than 20 older sources. That is why it continues to be one of the most discussed maps in the world. Of course, there are different interpretations surrounding it. Some believe that it depicts the coast of Antarctica centuries before its official discovery, while others see it solely as the southern coast of South America. We'll go into more detail on this topic in a separate video. However, when we compare all of these maps with modern scientific discoveries, an interesting possibility begins to emerge. It's not that cartographers saw the green Sahara with their own eyes, but that they may have used much older information, preserving information from a time when this area looked completely different. A curious detail is also found in Fra Mauro's map. In it, the central part of the Sahara is already marked as a desert, which suggests that the cartographer distinguished between the then state of the region and the information inherited from older sources. But the most mysterious detail is yet to come. On Sebastian Münster's map, it's not just the rivers and lakes that attract attention. In the western part of the Sahara, an unusual circular structure is visible. Located approximately where the famous Risha structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, is today. A similar motif appears on Heinrich Bunting's map of 1581. It depicts a river descending from the Atlas Mountains to the same area. Another map, depicting North Africa during the Roman Empire, also shows a river heading to the same location and continuing to the Atlantic Ocean. The curious thing is that modern geological research actually finds traces of the ancient Tamanrasset River. According to scientists, it originated in the Atlas Mountains and reached the Atlantic Ocean approximately 11,700 years ago, before gradually drying up about 5,000 years before the present. Even more impressively, other scientific studies have found traces of ancient aquatic life in the area of the Rishat structure, including remains of freshwater organisms dating back between 7 and 15,000 years. Of course, this in itself does not prove that the old maps are accurate representations of this ancient environment, but it does raise a logical question. How do several different cartographers, working in different countries and in different centuries, depict similar features in this particular area? The curiosity doesn't stop there. The Dori-Catalan Atlas contains a circular structure in the same area, and some researchers see a similar element on the Piri Reis map. Whether this is a coincidence, an artistic tradition, or a reflection of much older information remains a matter of debate. Among the most unusual images on the Munster map is a huge one-eyed creature placed in the area of present-day Nigeria and Cameroon. The most likely explanation is that European travelers came across an elephant skull without knowing its anatomy, which subsequently inspired the legends of the Cyclops. But whether this assumption is true or not, a larger question remains. Why are so many of these maps almost never discussed, even though they contain details that modern science has only begun to explore in recent decades? Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Do you think these old maps hold traces of lost ancient knowledge, or can everything be explained by legends, assumptions, and inaccuracies of medieval cartographers? Write your opinion in the comments. I would be interested to read your point of view. If you found the video interesting, support it with a like, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell so as not to miss the next investigations. Share this video with a friend who loves ancient mysteries and the mysteries of lost history. Now, click on one of the 2 videos that appear on the screen. I'm sure the next mystery will surprise you even more.